New year, same problems. Wobble, 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 wobble. Are these right down here? Who knows? And this dropper is really slow. Look at that. And then on top of that, we've got a full service on the spike. So we need to just do everything, strip it down, rebuild it. It's probably not going to be cheap because of the sheer quantity of work we've got here, but we should be able to be quite thorough with this one, which should be nice, and go through everything. So quick little maneuver. When you're removing calipers and you've got all of your spacers and your post mount in situ, good little tip is to get an elastic band, pop it around the bolts just to hold it in place. That way you can band it up, it won't go anywhere. It's there for safekeeping for now as we remove the brake. As one man once said, welcome back sports fans, we have some little parts over here that need replacement bearings. The warranty for Santa Cruz is really, really good. If you've registered your Santa Cruz and you've had it since new, they will entitle you to get a little bearing kit over here so you can replace all your frame bearings. As long as it's not been mistreated or misused, your local shop can order it, or your Santa Cruz dealer, they can order it for you. I'm not too sure, you might even be able to order it yourself if you got everything registered. I'm not too sure on that one, but usually they want to be professionally installed, which is what we're going to do today. And we're going to do it using the All-Talk kit. You've seen this previously on the channel, we're going to cover it again now because it's such an amazing kit. It's going to stop us from damaging those bearings when we extract them. So when we're inserting these bearings into our linkage parts here, we need to be very careful with the orientation. They have a grease port in the linkage part here, has a little runner inside, and that will feed grease to the bearings. So in your sort of 6-month service, really, you should be going through and purging some grease through, keeping those bearings nice and lubricated, forcing out all of the old degraded grease and keeping us nice and full. Other bearings on the system, these are all sealed. When you have this lovely RockShox to Super Deluxe over here, there's 2 bearings on it, they aren't covered in the kit. You will need to replace those yourself, and I highly, highly recommend, if you're doing the frame bearings, replace these bearings. You know, they kind of need to be feeling fresh. We don't want any slop in there, which is what we've got here, because that will wear on other parts, and it will, worse still, it'll start wearing on your shock itself. Let's start off by removing all of these fully sealed bearings and go from there. So, All kit, our correct size bearing. What we're going to do is we're going to do a depth check. So, we're going to extract the big bearings first. I'll slide that on there and make sure that we're getting the lips over the edge of the bearing. So when this splays out, it's going to grip the bearing so we can extract it out. And we don't want that sitting too high or too low, because we want the lips to be over the edge of the bearing, not inside or like miles up, so the expander doesn't do anything. As you can see, there's like loads of different sections, so we can get loads of different depths of bearing. So the versatility of this All kit is absolutely immense. So we're going to go for an oversleeve. Pull our piece over here. 2 things we need to check. Bearing fits inside. Bearing definitely fits inside that one, but can we get a closer fit? That one's a bit closer. You also see the outside is a bit different. So sometimes we haven't got much of a surface, so we want a tighter fit around the bearing. Like this one, we've got this thin surface here. So this bigger one, yes, it'll work, but it's just going to go over the edge and not sit properly. Whereas this will sit nice and flush on top of that surface there of the actual frame component, thus giving us a clean pull out and a nice fitment. We've now extracted that bearing, nice and clean, no resistance. Look at that, beautiful. We're going to pull out the spacer from the center, and we're going to probably have to give that a quick clean, and we're going to work out which spacer it is because they are all part coded on there, and then we can put that to the side in a nice order, so when we're reinstalling we know exactly where that spacer goes, and we're going to replace it with a new one. Right, now time to scale things down to a smaller bearing. So we've got a smaller part of the All kit. We're sitting quite low, so we want to lift this up, so this shoulder is a bit higher up on the bearing, so we're sitting about there is where we want. So what we'll do is we'll lift that up 1 notch and then we'll crack on. Right, so now we've set the depth, let's find the over. There we are, that one fits in quite nice and snug, not much room around the outside. Got a nice flat surface here from the Santa Cruz part here, fits perfectly. Yeah, let's get extracting. So we spoke earlier about the little grease nipple. We also spoke about our little spacers in here. Now, I mentioned about purging grease. on your 6-month service, you know. And as you can see here, this bike has not had that because I am pulling clay out from this link. Now, this is not healthy for the bearings one bit. This is just dirt and water ingress mixed with grease. This is what needs to be purged out of the system on these Santa Cruzes. So if you pull that sleeve out, oh man, it is grim. It's just horribleness. If we look really deep, we can see that someone at one point in time did have some fresh grease in there. So this bearing set in here, in this horrible murky grease, we've removed all of it now. Now, if we remove this grease grub screw, we can actually poke straight through the centre and remove any excess grease by force, like I've done here. Already pulled it out. And you can see why I have, because it's all mixed in with dirt and debris. So if I start cleaning this and I don't get it all out, we're going to end up mixing a bit of detergent, dirt, grease, everything in there. So we want to try and get it, all of the chunky bits out as much as possible so we're not mixing everything up. So we've got some parts to put back in. We have this little grub screw, which we removed earlier, which is grease port A, and we've got this little piece over here, which is grease port B. So we want to put this grease nipple back in here. Now, flash up on screen, editor, our little instruction or exploded view, and what you will see is this little grease nipple needs to be torqued to 9 Newton meters. Now, the keener-eyed among you might also see that there is no mention of thread lock nor grease. However, if we look at the grub screw A, back over to the grease port A, we can see that there is thread lock mentioned there. So we are not going to be applying any grease or thread lock, and we're going to make sure this is clean. So I'm going to start this off by hand, simply because I don't want to cross thread it. Aluminium part, steel part, you don't want to cross thread that. Now we're all the way home, we're going to apply our torque wrench. Next, we're going to reapply our tiny little screw. So this one here, I believe, is a really low torque setting. So we will fit it, check the manufacturer's instruction, and make sure we are applying the correct amount of torque. Perfect. So everything now is back in situ. We're going to make sure that our grease nipple is doing what it needs to be doing. So we're going to pump some grease in. There we go. So I can see grease is appearing from the little spout in there, that little bubble of grease right there. So I'm going to block that off with my finger and see if we can get grease coming out the other side of the grease port inside there. There we go. Perfect. So we know that both of these grease ports are now working. We can refit our bearings to here and we can get on with the job. What we're going to do is put a little bit of grease on the back of the bearing, make sure that's full, just to give it a bit of help. Grease on the outside edges, much like the manufacturer's instructions say, so when we press that bearing, it should slide into place nicely. Right, so to get the bearings into place, we're going to use this lovely Wheels Manufacturing bearing press. So let's put that hammer back and get this bearing press out, and we will press these lovely bearings into place and get everything moving and done. So what I'm looking for when I'm using the grease gun is in the centre of the eyelet, I can see there's a little gap at the back here where this centre shaft that I inserted is used for either extraction or to see if the grease has gone all the way through. And when the grease goes through this passage, it goes underneath, and a little gap in the spacer, for example, this one over here, the grease will pass through that port, and that means this full area now is all full of grease if it passes through that port there. So I can see a little bit there, and I can also see a bit at the bottom as well. So we're going to stop there. That is now full of grease. So we've now got 4 bearings remaining just for this yoke here, and all we will do is lightly grease the exterior so we can press into place. They are sealed bearings, they already have grease in there from the factory, and we'll leave it at that. Oh, I've never been around suspension that smells, man. What the? So we've come to a bit of a crossroads in this video. We're actually going to wrap it here because of the fact that we've got this little issue here. Taking this apart and jangle, jangle, jangle. This isn't ideal. So we've got this O-ring here. It's a bit on the loose side. This is part of the 200-hour service, which is a full strip of the shock. That's not covered in our full strip and rebuild. We replace the seals in the air can, and we replace the seals around here at the top of the shaft. What we don't do is get into O-rings and oils inside here. We will do that for the 200-hour service, so I'm having to get back to the customer, advise them about this, advise them they need that 200-hour service, and so we're going to have to wait for them to come back to us and say, yes, go ahead with it. If you do want to see more suspension work in the future, get down in the comments, let us know, tell us that you want to see suspension work, and maybe Paul will let me do some. If you want a more in-depth analysis than this video can give, you can be the first to experience our online school over at school.com. Search Mapdec over there. More info on that project coming soon.